All right, welcome everyone to the exclusive webinar for members only. We are going to be talking today about first aid for animals, specifically wounds and injuries. I have a lot of stories about this one, so I'm going to share a few with you today about my own animals because I'm allowed to share those. So let me share my screen really quick. Oh, Steph, 1 year today since Gumdrop's beak crack break thing that he had happen. What happened to my thing? Okay, I have too many things open, guys. All right. All right, can you guys see the slides? Can you see the slides? Okay. You guys can hear me okay? Okay, so let's get started. We have a lot to cover today. So today we're going to cover essential oils for wounds and injuries. Just a reminder, this is an exclusive workshop for those of you in the paid membership. So please don't record this or share this outside of the group. And if you have anybody that you know that would benefit from this information, you can certainly watch it first and see if it makes sense for them. But you can go ahead and invite them to the group by purchasing a membership. So just a reminder on that. So no recording and posting on social media, please. Haley, do you want to see if we can stream this into the paid membership group? We can see if that works. But first, we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to do a giveaway for those of you that are live. The first thing we're going to give away is we're going to do 2 giveaways. We're going to do one at the beginning and one at the end because I love it when you guys come on live, and it's always more fun when there's more people. And so hopefully having presence will incentivize you guys to come on live more often. So the first thing that we're going to give away frankincense oil. It's a 15 milliliter Boswellia. And this is a blend of different frankincense oils that it has Guattari, Sacra, Papifera, and I can't say the last one, Farina. I don't know. Anyways, it's 4 different species of frankincense, and it makes it that much more broad spectrum to use. So if this is an oil that you want, it's a nice expensive one. And if it's one you want, raise your hand, say, choose me. And oh, it's Steph's birthday today. Awesome. And then Haley, if you want to choose someone to win the frankincense, let me know and we will get started. Happy birthday, Steph. Oh, you guys want the frankincense, I can tell. You're gonna have to private message me, Haley, because I don't have my phone with me. Okay, okay. It's gonna go to Steph because it's her birthday. Okay. Happy birthday, Stephanie. You're gonna frankincense. Awesome. Congratulations. Okay. Now let's get to why you guys are here. And it's quite a lot of information. So don't feel overwhelmed by it. Just take what you can and just know that you guys will be able to watch the replay on this. If you're watching the replay on this, please comment #replay so that I know who's watching these live versus on the replay. And if you watch it more than once, tag it more than once. All right. So today we're going to start off with talking about wound healing and how wounds heal, because that information I think will help you with moving forward and understanding why we use certain oils that we do, why we use certain when surgery is needed, and that sort of thing. And then we're going to talk about the types of wounds and injuries that there are and when to get your vet involved. When is it an actual veterinary emergency? A horse getting cut in the field might just be superficial, or it might need stitches. So knowing when to call the vet out and spend that money is really important as well. Then we're going to talk about essential oils that can help. I'm going to give you guys some information on what to include in your first aid kits at home for your animals or at the barn. And then if we have time at the end, we'll have time for some questions specifically about this topic. If you have other questions, just hop on our regular Sunday evening Q&A later this week. So there are 4 stages of wound healing, 4 stages that once an animal is injured or cut, the wound has to heal, and 4 things have to happen. So the first thing that has to happen is inflammation. So inflammation is not always a bad thing. Inflammation is what gets the blood vessels to constrict to make sure that an animal doesn't bleed out, or a person. Inflammation is where you have the initial swelling, there's pain associated with that, redness, heat, immobility. If it's especially on a high motion area, you won't be able to move that area. Loss of function, and this is where you'll get some lameness as well when an animal starts limping, if it's on their leg. And then what's happening is the blood vessels are constricting initially to control the bleeding. Then the blood vessels dilate, or they get bigger, which results in localized swelling. So they're increasing the blood flow to that area, which increases the redness and the heat. There are some causes for concern during this phase. Obviously, it's when new things can be introduced to the wound that could potentially lead to infection, pathogenic type bacteria, and things like that. You can get a high fever. If there's any excessive bleeding, like a vessel is cut, this can obviously be pretty serious. If your animal has pale gums, it could mean that they're bleeding out too quickly, or that there's some internal bleeding potentially, or that they're going into some shock. So watch those gums. If they're normally nice and pink or red, when they start to get pale or white, that is cause for concern. Any kind of streaking around the wound can indicate pretty serious infection or sepsis, or any kind of foul odor, and not the normal like gunk odor. If it's bandaged, there's just this kind of normal odor that comes as it's oozing. But like if it actually smells foul, like infected or anything like that, there's a very distinct smell to that. All right, the next stage after inflammation is debridement, or debridement. Some people say debridement, I say debridement. That's how I learned it. And so there's 2 types of debridement. There's selective debridement, which is ideal. This is where the damaged tissue, the dead and damaged tissue, is removed without damaging the healthy tissue. So you end up with healthy tissue contacting healthy tissue, and then you're going to get healthy tissue underneath it. So you remove the necrotic, the dead, the contaminated tissue, and you're left with only healthy tissue, which then can expedite healing. This is where, flushing out wounds is really important and things like that. Then you have non-selective debridement, which is indiscriminate removal of both healthy and unhealthy tissue. And this happens with just kind of natural scabbing and things like that. Sometimes healthy tissue can be removed, sometimes unhealthy tissue can be removed at the same time. And then there's different forms of debridement. There's natural, and then of course there's surgical or veterinary involvement. So we have autolytic, which is selective and natural. So that's kind of the normal process of something scabbing over, and the body, the immune system is getting involved. White blood cells migrate to the area and kind of clean it up. That attacks any bacteria or foreign material that's in there. It cleans up the damaged tissue. And then that's kind of at the cellular level. So there's certain cells that are specific to that process. It's a very essential in healing. And then you have veterinary involvement, which is surgical. debridement is it's less precise. You're getting healthy tissue to healthy tissue. That's the goal, because you want to make sure it's healthy tissue touching healthy tissue. But then this is very clean typically, and can expedite the process. Then you have mechanical debridement, which is non-selective and traumatizing to the wound, where you're just scrubbing it, or, you know, flushing it with caustic things like hydrogen peroxide or things like that. So that's what we don't want, because that can actually damage healthy tissue. Then the third stage of wound healing, so we have inflammation, debridement, and then proliferation or granulation. This is where the tissue granulates in underneath the wound, kind of from the inside out. And this is, we have two things that can happen here for granulation. We can have primary intention healing. So primary intention is ideal. That is surgical. It's where your vet cleans it out and then sutures it up, and it's all intact and clean and wonderful because it was a simple, you know, simple injury. And then we have second intention healing, which is usually like when a drain gets placed, if a veterinarian is involved, or it's been too long and we can't suture it up, or, you know, just because of the location, it's not possible to be sutured together. Then often larger, more open wounds are like this. It may require drainage. These heal faster if it stays moist. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Moist is good when it comes to wound healing. Okay. So bandage, this is why we do bandages, right? So that it actually heal faster underneath that bandage, because it's staying moist as opposed to drying out. Second intention healing is a wonderful way to heal. And a lot of times we do both. So sometimes we might suture up part of a wound, but we can't close it all the way. And then the rest of it will heal via second intention. And sometimes we'll go in and debride it a couple of times and try to get it closed a little bit better, depending on the situation. So what's happening during proliferation or granulation is the wound fills in with granulation tissue, which is primarily fibroblasts and capillaries. This is highly vascular. Granulation tissue, excessive granulation tissue in horses is called proud flesh. They're very good at creating granulation tissue to the point where it causes problems sometimes. But this then fills in the space that is created by the wound and creates new blood vessels. The wound starts to contract as the body creates new layers of skin, slowly closing it up. And then you have re-epithelialization, which is where the skin basically reaches across and covers that wound with new healthy skin. Then we have remodeling, is the fourth stage. So we have inflammation, debridement, granulation or proliferation, and remodeling or maturation, the final stage of wound healing. This is where you kind of have a scar and the lumpy collagen fibers begin to reorganize along the lines of tension. The body resorbs any excess fluid that might be there. The scar tissue gets thinner and thinner over time and stronger over a period of months or years, and we can expedite that a little bit with our oils. And most of these wounds, regardless of how quickly they heal, they do remain a little bit weaker than the original tissue. So any kind of scar tissue is going to be slightly weaker, 15 to 20% weaker than the original tissue. So keep that in mind. And so this is just an example of a dog that had gotten bit by another dog on the leg. He got in a fight, and it started off as kind of a big open wound. This first picture is about a week later. So they were using some oils on it, but he was licking it quite a lot. But the oils kept it from getting infected. If you can see this wound, sorry guys, it's a little gross, but you didn't think it was not going to be, you're not going to have gross pictures, right? And in a wound and injuries lecture. Come on. Okay, so you can see, if you look at this first picture, you can see the muscle and it's nice and healthy. There's no infection. It was cleaned up really well by the veterinarian there. She ended up not using any of the recommended medications by the veterinarian, but instead wanted to use oils. And so she, I was like, just make sure that he doesn't lick it anymore. Okay. And this is not an area that could be bandaged either very well. And so she just let it heal by second intention. The next week, 1 week later, and you can see it's pretty deep. But 1 week later, this is the granulation period, right? So this is all that dark purpley red in there is that granulation tissue, highly vascular. And you can see she didn't clean it up before this picture, but she was keeping it clean, not infected. It's granulating in really, really fast because of the oils that she used. And we're going to talk about what she used there as far as the recipe. And then 1 week later, you can see it's almost closed. She actually had to zoom in a little bit because it's almost completely closed. And just a couple of days after that, it completely closed in. This was the modeling the proliferation phase where the re-epithelialization was happening. And then once that was closed, then the remodeling really started. And that part of the body was fully functional once again with no oozing or anything like that. So very quick. This is normally would take at least 4 feel with this large of a wound and how deep it was with traditional modalities. And she got it pretty much down in about 2 weeks. Very quick with oils and no infection, which is really cool. So there are some different types of wounds and when you really need to call a vet. Okay, so we have cuts and tears, lacerations. This is the most common type of injury with all animals. They get cut or scrapes or bruises, these sort of things. If it's a laceration, if it's a cut that won't stop or is very deep, or if it's over a joint or a tendon, then you will need to contact your veterinarian. Okay, so if it's deep, it won't stop bleeding. If it's a superficial, your dog got scratched on the nose by your cat, and it didn't affect the eye or anything like that, you can definitely handle that at home. But if it's deep or the bleeding won't stop, or if you're really worried because it's over a joint or tendon, especially with horses, then you do need to contact your veterinarian. Bite wounds are also very common. So the last photo that we just had, that was a bite wound from another animal. These are typically puncture wounds. If it actually punctures the skin, if it actually goes punctures the skin, it's not a bad idea to get a veterinarian involved, especially if it's a deep wound. This person did get her vet involved and the vet cleaned it up and made some recommendations. She didn't follow them and it turned out fine, but it is not a bad idea to get a vet involved to make sure that there isn't any kind of infection or anything like that going on. Degloving injuries is another type of injury. And what that is exactly how it sounds, and it sounds horrible. And basically, like when you take off a glove, you're removing that layer, right? And so degloving injury is where the outside layer of the skin is actually pulled down and sometimes removed. This happens when maybe somebody gets their tail caught in a closed door and runs. This can happen with getting caught in fencing or that sort of thing. These are always a veterinary emergency. So you will want to go to the emergency clinic or your regular vet if they're open to handle this type of injury, because you can save that skin a lot of times if you get it sutured up fast enough. You can save a good chunk of it anyways, sometimes, not always. Gunshot, hit by car, possible serious injuries, all internal or external. These are always veterinary emergencies, always. So please go to your veterinary emergency clinic. Make sure you have that number handy, like on your fridge or something like that, because when you're in a panic situation like this, where you're dealing with a hurt animal and you're trying to figure out where to go, keep your emergency vet clinic number super handy on the fridge if possible, or someplace very close to the door where you know where to access it very quickly. Eye wounds are always a veterinary emergency no matter what. Eyes can go downhill very quickly. And there's a lot that we can do with them, not with oils, but with traditional medicine to possibly save them. But the sooner you act on those, the better. So eye wounds, especially if it injures the actual globe of the eye, not eyelid. Eyelids sometimes can wait, but eyelid, the actual eyeball, the globe injury is always a veterinary emergency. So, and then we have different types of pressure wounds, so decubital ulcers or pressure sores. These are not really necessary to get a veterinarian involved. We can usually handle these. They're usually immobile animals when a tissue doesn't get enough circulation or oxygen, like they get bed sores basically. Hygiene and regular changing of positions and a properly padded bed help prevent these. This is a little bit more common in animals that are paralyzed or just need a little extra TLC. So it's important to be really involved in these cases to make sure that the animal doesn't get inadvertently neglected. A lot of times they like to lay on one side more than the other, but making sure that you rotate them when possible. Older dogs as well can get these, especially if they stop wanting to lie on their bed. Sometimes they like the cooler feeling of the tile floor or, the wood floor or whatever you have, because it feels good because it's nice and cool, but that's when they can get more pressure sores as they get older. But that's not uncommon either. You can't really always convince them to lay on a blanket. If they're like, I'm hot, I want to lay on the cold floor, you just do your best. And then street nails and horses. This is always an emergency, but do not remove the nail. So if your horse picks up a nail in their foot and you notice it and they're off, your first instinct is going to be to pull that out as quick as possible. Do not do that. Contact your vet, have them get an x-ray of the hoof to see what tissues are involved before you remove it, because you can actually see a lot more while it's still in there, as opposed to once you take it out, trying to figure out where exactly it is really impossible. So call your vet, get an x-ray really quick, and then they'll pull it out. Hopefully it'll be nothing, but sometimes they do have a lot of soft tissue structures in that hoof that can cause a lot of permanent damage if not addressed quickly and properly. So what do you do when your animal is wounded? So you're going for a walk and your dog gets attacked by another dog, or God forbid something happens to him, steps on a piece of metal or something like that. If the animal is bleeding, well, the first thing you're going to do is apply pressure. So apply pressure to stop the bleeding. It can be with a cloth, it can be with your hand. It doesn't matter. Just stop the bleeding, and pressure is the easiest and best thing to stop the bleeding. If the wound is not bleeding but is dirty, make sure you clean it. But when you clean it, use water or saline only. Do not use hydrogen peroxide. Do not try to use betadine or any essential oil concoctions. Just plain water or saline solution, not contact solution, just regular saline. Do not attempt to flush out or clean a puncture wound. Have your vet assess these. Okay, if you try to flush out a puncture wound, sometimes it can actually push stuff in that you don't want to. So have a vet assess those. Do not apply oils until the wound is assessed. And this can be assessed by you. If you look at it and you're like, oh, this is pretty superficial, I don't think it needs to be sutured, then you can definitely do stuff. But if you look at it and you're like, oh, this might have to have sutures on it, nothing should be put on that wound except for water or saline to clean it. Don't use soap, don't use ointment, don't use salve, don't use oils, don't use anything, because they're going to be able to get a cleaner margins and they're going to be able to do a better job to suture it up if there's absolutely nothing on there. Okay, I know it's counterintuitive because you want to do something, but just stop the bleeding with some pressure. You can certainly put a light bandage over it, but don't put anything salve or anything like that on it. No ointments. After it's assessed, if it needs to be sutured, obviously take it to the vet to do that. If it's manageable at home, you can clean the area with a gentle soap. So now you can get involved, do a gentle soap, shave around the wound, or gently trim it with scissors. Shaving is always best because this is going to keep the hair out of the wound and make it more accessible. I recommend you shave the area and then flush it again. This is, and shave more than you think, because that is going to make sure no hair, especially if you have a long haired animal or it's winter, you're going to be able to keep the junk, the hair out of it, because as soon as hair gets in it, it causes inflammation that we don't want, and it can cause irritation and possibly infection. So keeping it clean is super important. So then clean it up really good. And once it's clean and dry, then you can determine what oils or recipes you want to use. So here are some essential oils for wounds and injuries. We've got my favorite one for acute injuries. So when it first happens, Yaropalm is excellent. It's an analgesic, it's anti-inflammatory, it's antiseptic, so it keeps the infections out. It stops excess bleeding, is extremely good for wound healing, and helps reduce the appearance of scars. This is for topical use only, specifically on a wound. And it's also really amazing for paw pads. So right now, this time of year, I live in Texas, for those of you that don't know, and it is hot. It is hot, which means the ground is hot, the sand is hot. I think they measured the sand temperature last weekend at Pedernales State Park, and it was 151 degrees. The dogs were burning their paw pads on the sand. Kids were burning their feet. It was really bad. So paw pads get injured. They don't have a lot of feeling in those paw pads because of the keratinized tissue, but once you start to get them cut and that sort of thing, it can be very painful for them. The paw pads can get cut. And so this is a really great recipe. I use it as a spray, and it's amazing for torn or burned paw pads. It's 20 drops Yaropalm, 20 drops myrrh, 10 drops helichrysum, 5 drops Roman chamomile, 5 drops frankincense, and 5 drops copaiba. I put that in a 2-ounce bottle with either some fractionated coconut oil. You can use any carrier oil, really. I like to use the Yaropalm serum in these cases because it's a little thicker, and I think it works really, really well if you have some of that. So this is amazing for torn or burn paw pads. This is something that I've used quite a bit on my own dogs. When we lived in Austin, they would occasionally get out of their yard. And when they did this in the summertime, Miles and Lucy would go on a little adventure around our little neighborhood, but they'd always run on the hot concrete. And they would run around until they would cut their pads, they'd burn their pads, and then they'd lay down in one of my neighbor's yards, waiting for someone to come pick them up because they were feeling very helpless and tired by that point. I don't know why they did this, because they kept doing it. And then when we moved out to the country, they did it here too, except for they actually tore up their pads even worse because we have gravel here. And so they were tearing up their pads once they got hot, because they were running. They didn't care. They were chasing rabbits and deer and all the fun things out here. And they didn't realize it hurt until it was too late. So this is something that I use on a regular basis for torn or burned paw pads, and it's very, very effective. So hopefully you got that recipe. And all these recipes are also in the membership group too, if you guys want to look those up. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is frankincense. So the oil that Stephanie just won. Frankincense is an analgesic, which means it's really good for pain relief. And it's an anti-inflammatory. It's anti-tumoral. So if you have a wound due to cancer, like a lump or a bump, and it causes some irritation, or it gets crusty or anything like that, frankincense is an excellent choice for that. It's an antioxidant. It reduces scars, and it's good for wound healing. And this is my favorite spray. And this is the spray that we used for the dog that got bit earlier. So that photo, this one right here, let me see if I can find it. It's too many. This one right here, this is the spray that we used. in a 1 ounce spray bottle. You can use a 2 ounce spray bottle if it's a small dog or a cat. But 10 drops lavender, 10 drops frankincense, 10 drops myrrh, 10 drops copaiba, and 2 drops colloidal silver, or 2 teaspoons colloidal silver. I think I also use 2 drops of helichrysum in this quite often. So just you can add that if you want, and then top it off with aloe vera juice. So we use a little bit of colloidal silver, which has antibacterial and anti-infectious properties as well. And the aloe vera juice is very cooling, especially for red irritated wounds, and is also very healing as well. Shake it before each use because the oils do settle on top with this one. And then spray as needed throughout the day. 2 to 4 to 6 times a day is totally fine. It's super diluted and super safe. I use juice instead of gel. Yes, Shelly, because it sprays better. If you wanted to make this into like a gel kind of salve, you can definitely use the gel, but don't put it in a spray bottle because it'll gunk up your spray bottle really bad. Then we have helichrysum. So this is, oh my gosh, this is my favorite salve recipe. Helichrysum is antibacterial. It reduces scars. It's analgesic, especially for trauma. So if it, a cut or a wound, super good for that wound healing. It soothes nerves. And so if you have a very painful wound, helichrysum can be helpful for that. And it's also very calming. It clears blood clots. It's good for bruising. It increases red blood cell production. So this is a good one to use in those anemic cases or animals that have bled out a lot that you're like, okay, they need to build up their red blood cell production. Helichrysum is helpful in those cases. It's extremely good for cellular health. It also supports the liver and the spleen. The spleen is important in red blood cell production, so that makes sense. And it's my absolute favorite oil to use with burns or fire victims. We have a lot of fires going on around the world these days. And so helichrysum diffused can actually soothe and heal the tissue in the lungs. And that is one of my favorite ways to use helichrysum, but it's extremely good for burns. I like it in conjunction with lavender in those cases. And you can use it orally, topically, or diffused. Diffused is excellent for healing the lungs. All right. And then this recipe is my favorite salve recipe. It's my all natural healing salve. It's 8 ounces of cold pressed, unrefined, raw, organic coconut oil. Use 1.25 ounces of beeswax, 3 to 4 drops of vitamin E oil or lanolin. I really like vitamin E oil. I might actually go up to 5 drops on that one. And then 5 drops helichrysum, 10 drops myrrh, 15 drops frankincense, 10 drops copaiba, and 10 drops lavender. This makes about a little over a cup of salve, and it stores for 6 months really easily if it's in a nice, cool, refrigerated area. So excellent for healing. Helichrysum. Copaiba is a lifesaver. It is an analgesic, so it helps with pain. It's anti-inflammatory, it's antiseptic, it's wound healing, and it's emotionally very calming. So you just cannot go wrong with choosing copaiba in any case. It can be used orally, topically, or diffused. And this copaiba was a lifesaver for me and really all my animals. But this is Lucy. You guys some of you that have been around a while might remember this story. But when we first moved out to the ranch here a little less than a year ago, she found a rattlesnake, and it was a big one. And she thought she would be a hero and save us from the rattlesnake. Unfortunately, she got bit pretty badly on the muzzle. You can see the little spot right next to her little nose. She still has a little, little Marilyn Monroe scar there from that. And she immediately started swelling quite badly. She started going into shock. Her gums went pale. I took her into the emergency clinic right away. Getting bit by a rattlesnake is a copperhead or any pit viper is going to be a veterinary emergency, and those dogs do need antivenom or antivenin. And we were able to get that into her really quickly. And then we used oils for everything else. And she did really well. We did give her fluids because she got really shocky. But this was right after it happened, after we got back from getting the antivenom. And then I oiled her up really well. And within 24 hours, she was almost completely better, but within 36 hours, she was completely better. Like nothing had ever happened. No swelling, no nothing, which sometimes this can take weeks for the swelling to go down otherwise. So with her, we used all of these oils on the bed. She got Copaiba internally 3 to 4 times a day, one of the soft gels. She also got On Guard 3 times a day to help prevent infection, because those can be nasty infected wounds sometimes, nasty puncture wounds. She got Yarrow Palm and Geranium right away. I think I used a little bit of Helichrysum as well. So I just grabbed some of the sensitive skin oil that I had laying around, a drop of Yarrow Palm, a drop of Geranium, and a drop of Helichrysum. I just put it in my hands and put it on her muzzle to stop the bleeding, because the rattlesnake venom contains anticoagulants, and so it just would not stop bleeding, basically the wound. And so as soon as I applied that Yarrow Palm, Geranium, Helichrysum, that stopped relatively quickly after that. I used Balance topically along her spine. I used Stronger on her ear tips. And then we used Roman chamomile. I believe I used juniper berries to help detox. We used lavender to help keep her calm. And she did really, really well with this combination of oils. So we used them topically, internally, and diffused. All right, next we have a myrrh, and we've talked about myrrh because it's in those last 2 recipes I just gave you. But myrrh is a powerful antiseptic. People don't think about how antiseptic it is, but I basically think of this. This is extremely good for open wounds, because not only is it antiseptic, but it's wound healing. It promotes cell rejuvenation. It kind of numbs the area a little bit as well. And it's not hot like clove. Clove can numb the area too, but it stings like a son of a gun and on a wound. You don't want to put that on a wound. Myrrh is soothing to wounds. Promotes circulation. It strengthens nails, hooves, and hair. And it's chronic. It's really good for chronic and non-healing wounds, because it also tastes very bitter. And so animals don't typically want to lick myrrh. That's not 100% true. If they still want to lick it, you can always put a cone on them or a nice little outfit so they don't lick it. This is for topical use. It can also be given internally. And it is in a lot of the Chinese herbal medications that you get. Myrrh is in a lot of those mixtures as well. So it's already used quite a lot in veterinary medicine. And this is a paw wax. So once an animal, so if you have a paw that's injured, it's cut or it's torn up or it's burned, once you get the initial wound kind of taken care of and it's not quite as painful, you can use this paw wax. And this paw wax is very protective against those things as well. And it's 3 ounces of beeswax, 3 tablespoons calendula infused oil, 3 tablespoons avocado oil, 3 tablespoons coconut oil. Now, if you don't have avocado or calendula, you can use one of these other ones. That's totally fine. Okay. Or you can use any other carrier oil. I just like calendula because it is very softening and soothing. It's really great. And then 2 drops myrrh, 2 drops frankincense, and 2 drops lavender. And you put that in a tin, like a wide mouth tin. You can actually wipe their paws on it or you can use your hands and take it out and put it on their paws that way. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is AromaTouch. Well, AromaTouch and marjoram. Marjoram is in AromaTouch for a really good reason. But AromaTouch is a blend of cypress, peppermint, marjoram, basil, grapefruit, and lavender. And it's really good for injured muscles and joints because it promotes circulation with that cypress. Cypress is a wonderful oil for this. It encourages relaxation and the release of any spasms or pain. It helps decrease bruising because of the lavender and the basil in it. And it's very good for pain relief because of the peppermint, marjoram, and basil in it. And it also helps lymph flow, which is why the grapefruit is in it. It's for topical use only. You do not give this one internally, but it is really, really good topically. Marjoram specifically, you can use and you can use these for dogs or cats. Just dilute it appropriately for the species. I usually do a 3% for dogs and a 1% for cats. And then marjoram is excellent for pain relief. It's anti-inflammatory. It calms the nerves. It's anti-arthritic. It's wound healing. It stimulates circulation. It causes vasodilation to help warm the muscles, kind of like how peppermint does as well. It's relaxing and it helps release trauma. So marjoram has really special benefits with injuries. And this is my house in Austin that we don't live there anymore. But I had, when we had Miles here, it's been a couple of years now, but you can see this is a 2-story house, right? So it's a two-story house, and behind this little tree here, it's kind of covering up 2 windows. And these 2 windows, my husband had them open because it was a nice spring day. And we have screens on the windows, so didn't think much of it. But Miles saw a squirrel and he thought he would go chase it. And he was sitting in my husband's office and he jumped through the screen on the 2nd story floor window and onto the concrete below. Jumped out of the 2nd story window onto the concrete below. And my husband was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And I, of course, run in there and start freaking out. And I run outside, fully expecting my poor dog, my poor naughty dog, to have a broken neck. Well, he didn't have a broken neck. He was actually over in the neighbor's yard because, that's where the squirrel ran. And he was totally fine. No scrapes, no bruise. Well, I know he didn't have time for bruising yet, but no broken bones. I do not know how that happened. Yeah, thank you. I miss this house. I live in a trailer now. But this was very traumatic. So I brought him home. And I immediately put some Aromatouch and marjoram on him. And I just put it all over, especially on his front legs, because that's where he landed. Probably landed hardest on his front legs. And I did that for about 3 days. And he was a little bit sore the next day, but not too bad. And he ended up being totally fine, even though he jumped out that super high window. He also got the deep blue polyphenol complex capsules internally as well as a preventive. And then we have one of my favorites, Spikenard. So this is me with a bunch of the boys leading Mac out. Of course, they thought I had treats. But Spikenard is a really good oil for wounds and injuries. It's anti-inflammatory. It's extremely wound healing. It decreases the chance for infection. It promotes cellular regeneration. Is extremely good for lymph circulation and edema. So swollen legs, swollen feet. My feet have been getting very swollen lately with the heat and being on them all the time outside. And spikenard really, really helps with that. Cypress and spikenard and helichrysum are a great combo. It stimulates circulation and improves vasodilation. So this one is a really good one. You guys have heard me talk about it, but after float days, or when I get really scratched up by a dog or a cat on my arms, I'll use about a tablespoon or so of lotion, unscented lotion on my hands, and 2 drops of spikenard and 2 drops of helichrysum. I rub them together and just slather on my arms at night right before bed. And then I sleep with it, sleep with it like that on there. Spikenard is also very calming. So is helichrysum. And I wake up the next morning and almost all of the scrapes and stuff are gone, unless it's particularly deep. Of course, we have lavender. Lavender is skin healing. It's good for pain relief, burns, antiseptic. It reduces scars, bruising. It's very relaxing. and decreases the impact of shock. So Lucy, when she got bit by a rattlesnake, she was shocky. We used some lavender with her to decrease the impact of that. And then of course we have our all-purpose wound spray for on the farm. And this one you don't want to use with dogs or cats because it has tea tree in it. But for all other species, horses, cattle, goats, sheep, llamas, alpacas, hogs, you can totally use this spray. So it's in a 4-ounce spray bottle and it's 20 drops each of lavender, frankincense, tea tree, myrrh, and helichrysum. Now we've talked about all of these except for tea tree so far. We'll talk about tea tree next. And then you're going to top this off with a carrier oil. In a pinch, you can use water. Just make sure you shake it well. So if you're like, I don't have any fractionated coconut oil out here, just top it off with some water and just shake it before you use it. I like using an oil because again, it keeps that wound moist so it can heal faster. So spray the wound liberally as needed, at least 1 time a day, preferably 2 to 4 for increased healing speed. I know sometimes people don't get out to the barn more than once a day. So sometimes that once a day is all you can do. But if you can do more than that, of course, it's always better. And then of course, tea tree, which is in that last recipe. And this wounds, all-purpose wounds, but you can use it for anything. Getting bit, by other animals. You can use it for any kind of wound. I've had this spray close up the most gigantic shoulder wounds on horses. It's really, really incredible, and it works very fast. Okay, tea tree is antibacterial, antifungal, and antimicrobial. So again, really helpful in anything around the farm. It's great for burns, bruises. It's extremely good for joint and muscle health and wounds from insects. It's also kind of a natural repellent, so you don't have to use that gross SWAT stuff. You can actually use tea tree, and it's quite effective. It's also one of my favorite oils to use for abscesses. And speaking of abscesses, this is a really good hoof abscess drawing clay. If you're in the Happy Healthy Horse Challenge, you got this one already, but it's 10 drops each of tea tree, lavender, and myrrh, 2 drops cypress, 10 drops of frankincense, 20 grams of bentonite clay, the calcium bentonite clay, 50 milliliters calendula infused oil. You don't have to use calendula. You can use whatever you have, fractionated coconut oil if you have it. And then 150 to 200 milliliters of witch hazel and 50 milliliters of fractionated coconut oil. So if you don't have calendula, you can just use 100 milliliters of fractionated coconut oil. And it makes this really great abscess drawing clay. You can put it on the hooves. You can also put it on the skin, okay, if you have an abscess like on the shoulder or something like that. If you want to use this with dogs, you can certainly remove the tea tree and replace it with one of the other oils that we talked about today. So you're going to mix everything together, the oils and the clay, then add the witch hazel while stirring until you get the desired consistency. If it gets a little dried out in storage, just add more witch hazel. It's 200 grams. It's right on the slide, Diane. Okay, other oils for wounds and injuries, rose and geranium. These can be used interchangeably to a point. Rose is anti-inflammatory, antiseptic, very good for scars. It nourishes the skin, it soothes the nerves, and helps with trauma from an emotional standpoint. I don't think there's anything that replaces rose when it comes to the emotional benefits and the scar reducing properties. Rose and helichrysum are both really good for both of those things. Geranium, a lot of those same properties. It's also pain relieving, so analgesic. One of my favorite ways to use geranium is to stop excess bleeding. Geranium stops bleeding like no other oil out there. I know a lot of people prefer helichrysum. I prefer geranium. Geranium and yarrow palm seem to work really well for stopping that excess bleeding, which is why I used it with Lucy when her wound from the rattlesnake bite wouldn't stop bleeding. It stimulates lymph flow, so it helps with edema or swelling. One more reason why I used it with Lucy on her muzzle. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps with bruising, reduce scars, and is wound healing. Rosemary is another really good oil for wounds and injuries. A lot of people don't think about it because it's not one that you're going to put like on an open wound, but it's very regenerative and is wound healing as well. It stimulates the cardiovascular system. It's antiseptic. It's analgesic, which is pain relieving. Also stops excess bleeding because it's kind of vasoconstricts. So it stops the bleeding that way. And then, but you don't want to use it in animals that have high blood pressure. So when they're shocky or have a low blood pressure, then it's okay. And then it also stimulates hair growth. So rosemary and cypress and lavender are a really good combination for when you have a wound and maybe you clipped it to keep it clean. And now you're like, oh my gosh, I really want this hair to grow back because now my dog just has this big bald spot. Once the wound is healed, using rosemary, cypress, and lavender can help that hair growth come back really quickly. And then this is my hoof spray recipe for horses, 20 drops Melaleuca, 10 drops rosemary, 4 to 5 drops vitamin E, and 2 ounces of carrier oil. This is going to help prevent thrush. It's very moisturizing to the hoof and can really help keep that hoof nice and healthy for a long time. You can just massage it into the hoof and coronet band as needed. It promotes healthy hoof growth and protects the hooves. So it actually will make the hooves grow faster, which is a good thing because then you can get the diseased hoof off faster. Then we have Roman chamomile, which is a very powerful pain relieving oil. Also why we used it with Lucy in her rattlesnake situation. It's antimicrobial, it soothes the nerves, it reduces scars and is good for burns. And this is my oozing wound powder. So when you have an oozing chronic wound, like a hot spot or summer itch or sweet itch in horses, this is a really good that you actually want that wound to dry out. If it's oozing and not healing, that's different than like a traumatic wound where you want to keep it moist so that the skin can come across and heal faster. If it's oozing because of, infection and things like that, that's a little different. But when you have an oozy, like serum wound, like a hot spot, you're going to use a 1/4 cup of baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate, a 1/4 cup of arrowroot powder, a 1/4 cup of bentonite clay. Again, that's the calcium bentonite clay, 1 tablespoon cornstarch, 10 drops each of peppermint, lavender, copaiba, and Roman chamomile. And this combination is really, really good for drying out those oozing wounds and getting them to heal a lot faster. Neroli and patchouli, I think these are the last 2 oils we're going to talk about. I wasn't going to put these ones in here, but I just couldn't help it because they're really good for healing wounds. Neroli is good for pain relief. It's cell regenerating. It's antiseptic. It's also a really good scar reducer, very regenerative in nature, and combats shock. So this is another one you can use instead of lavender for that sort of thing, or you can use both of them. Patchouli is an antiseptic. It promotes circulation. It soothes the skin, soothes the nerves, is wound healing, and is regenerative as well. And finally, this is Miss Violet. Earlier this year, she broke her right front leg, the radius and the tibia right in the middle. This is a veterinary emergency. When your animal breaks a leg, it is a veterinary emergency. We took her into the ER and got it x-rayed. We decided instead of surgery to let it heal on its own because the bones were pretty well aligned. And so she instead got cage rest and of course a splint. So this is not a full cast, but it's a splint that was very effective at keeping that immobile well and bandaged very well. We redid the bandage as needed when it got dirty. And went from there. When their leg is fully bandaged like this, I was distraught because I could not put my oils on exactly the location I wanted to, but we still did a lot of oils with her. She had to remain calm, and she was a less than 1-year-old puppy, or she was about a 1-year-old puppy at that time. So she was wild. And so she had to be cage rested for 8 weeks. And then I think we ended up doing 12 weeks with her just because I wanted to be safe. And so we kept her calm with Roman chamomile and lavender. We use a lot of Serenity and as well, and then Balance topically every single day. And then I did a lot of ear tipping with her, and I massaged oils into her shoulder above the break. Okay, because she had disuse atrophy from that shoulder not being used because she'd hold her leg up. And then I also used oils on the other leg, the supporting leg, because she was working a little bit harder on that one, having to bear all her weight on that. She's a little dog. So we did about I think I still use a 3% dilution of Aroma Touch on her. But we use Aroma Touch and Marjoram, and then Balance, Serenity. I used Stronger with her just to support her immune system because it was compromised at this point because of that. And she did really, really well. She did really well. And now she's running around like nothing ever happened. She's still, that leg is a little bit shorter because of how it healed. So she still gets the Kids Blend Rescuer. About, whenever she's feeling a little sore on it, I'll roll it right on that leg. And then she has her own roller bottle for it. And then she gets Copaiba twice a day in her food as well to help with the inflammation. And she's had that ever since that happened. Now, really quickly, we do we have the first aid kit for the home. We have dogs and cats. Here's what you need to include in it. Next one, we have a first aid kit for on the farm. So on the home, gauze for bandaging, and also makeshift muzzle for painful animals, non-stick bandages for controlling the bleeding and protecting the wounds, clean towels, which can be put in the microwave to warm up, or can be put in the freezer to cool down. You can use them as a sling. You can use for cleaning wounds and that sort of thing, or stopping bleeding. An eyedropper or syringe is really good for flushing wounds or for oral administration of something that you need, including oils. A muzzle is not a bad idea, especially if your animal is trained to it. And I recommend all dogs get trained to this because all dogs and all cats can bite, just like all horses can kick. Excuse me. Especially when they're in pain. So when they're injured or in pain, this is when they don't act like their normal selves because they're scared. Make sure you have an extra leash in there, some scissors to cut away fur or entanglements, tweezers. You can even put some wire cutters in there if you have a lot of wire on the where you live, tweezers for removing ticks or pulling out splinters or foreign material, witch hazel to soothe the skin and protect from infection, hot and cold packs. Be careful with hot packs. You don't want to put them directly on the skin. Cotton balls, nail clippers for broken nails, which can happen a lot. Activated charcoal if they eat something toxic. Benadryl is not a bad idea to have in there for emergency for anaphylactic type reactions, for allergy reactions, hives, that sort of thing. Disposable gloves, a thermometer, and then of course the essential oils or recipes we discussed today. The must-haves for sure: the all-natural healing salve, the wound spray, frankincense, copaiba, lavender, and geranium at a bare minimum. You can certainly have more in there if you want. And then for the farm, a few more things. So having a flashlight with working batteries, a thermometer, coconut oil, stethoscope, disposable gloves, duct tape, bandage scissors, tweezers or hemostats, wire cutters, pocket knife, a cold pack, gauze squares, vet wrap, Elasticon, 4-inch gauze rolls, non-stick pads, which are the Telfa pads, Gamgee or roll cotton. Gamgee is just a little bit more non-stick. You can get that from Tractor Supply. Towels, a twitch if you have one, an extra lead rope and halter, 60cc syringes and 12cc syringes with needles. Keep your Banamine in there, some betadine, hydrogen peroxide, your Correctex, which is amazing for wounds as well. In large animals, don't use Correctex. On small animals, it has tea tree oil in it. Rubbing alcohol, alcohol swabs, saline solution, not contact solution, just plain saline solution, the generic stuff. Eye lube, which is artificial tears, you can actually find that at Walgreens. or most grocery stores, standing wraps, some diapers for your hoof wraps, Butte or Equiox, either one of those is fine. Dormocidin gel for sedation if you need it, electrolyte paste, and then oils. Your must-haves, again, frankincense, copaiba, tea tree, lavender, and geranium. And then, of course, any of the others mentioned today or the recipes. That all-purpose wound spray for sure should be in there as well. So that is all for today. We did it in an hour. I have one more oil to give away. It is a helichrysum. We talked a lot about it today. You guys know I love it. It's a 5 milliliter of helichrysum. So if you need some helichrysum or want the helichrysum, make sure you say yes, and Haley will choose someone that Heather Hill, I think is what she said. Yep. Heather Hill, you're the winner of the helichrysum. So if you guys won, Stephanie and Heather, please send me a message with your mailing address so we can get these sent out to you next week. And yes, congratulations to you guys. We don't really have too much time for questions, but I wanted to go through the chat really quick so make sure I didn't miss anything. Elisa Perkins, is Yarrow Pom good for pinkness on the skin between the paw pads? It certainly wouldn't hurt. Lyudem, I don't know if I'm spelling your name right. Lyudmila Vernick, can I use Yarrow Pom on ruptured anal glands day 3? I would use the hot spot spray for that. And Diana says helichrysum is what I'm using on my chicken attacked by an eagle. It's working so good. Nancy, calendula infused oil. I'm not familiar with this and see it in many of the recipes. Basically, you can just get the calendula flowers and soak them in olive oil. And that's what I do. I just make my own, but you can order it from Amazon as well. It's a really nice oil. Let's see. Janet B, I had a lab colleague who launched himself out a screen window, but not so high up. Great, he did so well. Marie Jackson, can we use tea tree limited with dogs with stubborn yeast ears? Marie, you can. Just make sure you dilute it. So use like a 1 to 2% dilution, and it's like a one-time application. So repeat applications, like don't do it twice a day. Don't do it for 3 days. Just a one-time application can sometimes be all that they need. Deborah Williams, do you not treat your own animals? Do you still take them to the ER? I don't have a clinic. I'm mobile. And so for emergency situations, I absolutely go to the ER that we have right down the street from us. I'm very good friends with those guys, and they take very good care of my animals. So of course I do as much as I can, but I don't have an x-ray machine here. And so we needed to get an x-ray. And I don't have a lot of the emergency type equipment here because a lot of what I do is acupuncture and essential oils. So, but yes, I do absolutely still take my animals to the ER when I don't have the stuff that I need. I don't keep antivenom on, in my fridge or anything like that. So, because I have those guys right down the street that do that, and it's they give me a pretty nice professional discount as well. So it's a really good idea to have good relationships with your ER clinics and your veterinarians for when stuff like this happens, guys. All right, very cool. Paula, AromaTouch 1% with cats. Yes, 1% is typically what I use, 1 to 2%, depending on the situation in the cat and how sensitive they are, but usually 1%. All right, guys, that looks like all the time we have. I know some of you still have your hands raised. Please save your questions for Sunday, and I will see you on Sunday at the normal time at 6 p.m. Central for a normal Q&A on Zoom. If you need that link, click on the events. It should be on there, and it's the same one as last week, so nothing too tricky. But I will see you guys on Sunday. Okay, first, on a scale of 1 to 10, what did you guys think of this presentation on wounds and injuries? Did you learn anything? Yay! Oh, good. You guys liked it. Cool. Very fast. I had a lot to cover, Diana. Sorry. You can always rewatch it and slow it down. All right, guys. I will see y'all on Sunday. Bye.